Good morning, North Jersey. It's Tuesday, June 16th, and let's talk about what's happening today. So, as nationwide protests continue to happen, calling for an end to racial injustice and reforms to police departments, New Jersey officials are chiming in with their own policies. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about coronavirus. So, as of yesterday, dining out is back, and our reporter, Rebecca King, was out throughout North Jersey to tell us a little bit about what it's like to dine out during the coronavirus. So here to give us the full rundown on what it's like is our food and dining reporter, Rebecca King. Good morning, Rebecca. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jessie. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we've got big news this week. Dining out is back. People are super excited. You went out to a couple of places. What was that like?
I did. So yesterday the weather was beautiful. It was the perfect day, and I started off at Montclair Diner, and then I also went to Ridgewood, which is in Montclair, obviously, and then I also went to Ridgewood for lunch and went to Lisa's Mediterranean. So the scene was beautiful. Like I said, I started off at Montclair Diner. I spoke to the owner, Elliot. He has a beautiful outdoor alley that had tables set up, umbrellas set up. Everybody was in a good mood. The wait staff was so happy to be back. Elliot was happy to be back. He's ready to make big changes. Same thing in Ridgewood. People were out and about on the street. It had a very European feel. Tables were set up on the streets and everything. And other restaurants that aren't in downtowns, obviously Montclair and Ridgewood have beautiful downtowns. For the restaurants that don't have that, they've been closing off large sections of their parking lots and setting up tents and tables. So that's what it looks like practically. And I personally had a great time walking around these downtowns.
And the pictures look great, and it looked like a beautiful day yesterday. So I'm sure you had a lot of fun. Now, I've been talking to folks, and it seems like, half of the folks are really excited to be dining out and eager to go. And there's another half of folks who are kind of, a little bit more hesitant. There's still a public health pandemic happening. So while you were out there, did you hear any concerns or kind of any tips from restaurant owners to try to alleviate those concerns?
Sure. So while I was out, everybody seemed to be in a great mood. However, I was on social media and people were asking questions. So one of the big things that people asked were, are people actually socially distancing? Because, we can say that we're staying 6 feet apart and, that could just not happen. From what I saw, the answer is kind of yes and no. Staffs are really doing their best. Every waiter is wearing gloves. Every waiter is wearing face masks. When I got chicken and waffles at Montclair Diner, which were delicious, and the syrup came in its own individual pocket. So it wasn't a communal syrup thing that was passed around like you would normally see at a diner. So restaurants are really doing their best. All of the restaurants that I have been to are absolutely doing their best to stay socially distanced and keep everybody safe. That said, when you're in big downtowns, things can get crowded. I was in Morristown the other day, and there were a lot of people crowded around a certain bar. So it's really up to you. All of the safety precautions are there. If you feel more comfortable with plastic utensils, those are there. The restaurants are really doing everything that they can do. And it's up to you to determine whether or not you feel safe. If you see a large crowd, maybe avoid that restaurant, go to something else. And another thing that I'll say is, if you don't feel comfortable in general going out to eat, everybody is still offering takeout. Everybody is still offering pickup. So just do that. If you're high risk and you're really not feeling comfortable heading to these outdoor dining spaces, that's totally fine. Nobody is gonna penalize you for that. And I would say that would be the safer way to go. But if you're stir crazy, you feel safe, you feel healthy, I encourage you to head out, because it really is. It's a lovely experience to be out again.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, again, the majority of us are excited to leave our homes and catch some sun.
Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much once again for going out there. I know you'll be reporting on what's happening in the dining industry this week. So folks, if you want to catch more news on dining, feel free to head over to northjersey.com and watch Rebecca King's reporting. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thanks, Jessie.
Now, folks, dining isn't the only thing that is making a comeback. So yesterday, state officials announced the return of sports. So low-risk sports like tennis and golf, they can begin competing next month, while more high-risk ones like football will have to wait until next month. So here to tell us how this will impact youth sports is our sports reporter, Darren Cooper. Good morning, Darren. How are you?
Good morning, Miss Jessie. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So sports, very exciting. People love it. Now they're slowly coming back. Can you tell us how this is going to impact the youth sports specifically?
Okay, so we're talking about two different things, Jessie.
Okay.
There's youth sports and there's high school sports. Youth sports, think of your town little league. Think of your little league, your pee-wee football program, your youth lacrosse program, your youth soccer program. All of those were all given the green light by the governor to start approximately June 22nd. With different, sports are also ranked on how much physical contact there is. Like there's a lot more contact in a football game than there is a soccer game or a lacrosse game or a basketball game. So they're going to kind of phase in the way sports can be played. Baseball and softball can start practicing on June 22nd. And the big deal is that they can start games on July 6th. Why is that a big deal? Because they've been planning this monster baseball tournament, kind of a rec tournament called the Last Chance Tournament, starting on July 7th. Now, again, people need to recognize that these are youth sports governed by the town and the municipalities. These are different than the high school athletics that we cover, which are governed by the NJSIAA, the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a big point to know. I didn't know that, so thanks for bringing attention to that. Now, my biggest thing, I'm not a big sports player, but if I were a sports player, I feel like I would be energized by spectators and fans out in the stands. How is that? I don't think that's coming back any soon. And how will that impact players on the field?
Oh, that's a good question, Jessie. One of the mandates in the youth sports guidelines, if you read some of the fine print, they don't place a limit on the fans or anything, or how many there can be. They're going to ask people to respect social distance guidelines. The one thing they did have as a special little note that caught my attention was they don't want the fans to kind of loiter around the dugouts. They don't want the parents to be standing next to the kids or standing next to the coaches for an extended period of time. They caution the families, like, no carpooling. If you're going to go to this baseball tournament, take your own car, bring your own snacks, bring your own water. But fans will be welcome. I don't know what kind of services they'll have. A lot of concession stands will probably be closed. But they just want people to be respectful when it comes to being a fan.
Absolutely. Darren, the sports world is changing. Is there anything else we should keep our eyes open as things evolve?
Well, the next big step will be for the NJSIA, that's who governs high school sports, to announce when they can return to legitimate practices. That all hinges on what the governor is going to reopen schools, because we can't have school teams at Dumont High School or Rutherford High School if you don't have school. So there's a lot still to come from the governor's office about that. He's supposed to make a decision about schools or announce a decision sometime this week, I had been told. So that's the next big shoe to drop when it comes to sports in New Jersey.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep an eye out for your reporting and more from the sports world. Darren, thank you again so much for just breaking all this down for us. And folks, we have something very special happening tomorrow. We have a North Jersey Sports Awards show, so make sure to tune in at 7 p.m. on all social medias, right, Darren?
Correct. It's Thursday. Thursday. In light of our usual sports award gala, ours is virtual this year. It'll be Thursday. They lined up some amazing presenters. I can't believe they got rid of me for some guy named Bill Belichick and Patrick Mahomes, so I don't have to give out the awards. But it's going to be an awesome night. We encourage all of our fans to tune in and watch. It's totally free. Thursday, 6 o'clock on NorthJersey.com and all your favorite social media channels.
There it is. Darren, thank you so much for being here.
Anytime.
All righty, folks. So before we wrap up for the day, let's talk about the other thing that's happening in the world. So as thousands continue to take the streets to demand an end to police brutality, the state's Attorney General, Gurir Garal, announced that law enforcement agencies in the state must publicly identify officers who commit serious disciplinary violations. Now, this new policy will take effect later this year and sets a precedent for officers who commit serious violations. Now, here to chat about the new policy is our reporter, Terrence McDonald. Good morning, Terrence. How are you?
Morning. Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So let's talk about this. What's considered a serious disciplinary violation and who does it apply to?
So this is going to apply to officers who are terminated or suspended for 5 or more days because of disciplinary violations. That could encompass any number of things. But, when an officer gets charged, behind the scenes with an administrative violation of the disciplinary policy. It goes through this disciplinary process, and then they're punished with either nothing, or they get suspended for a couple of days, or suspended for longer, or they get terminated. And so once they go through that process, and they're found guilty of this offense, that's when their names are going to go on this list that the local law enforcement agency or county law enforcement agency is going to have to release at least once a year starting in December.
Got it. Now, for decades, the state obviously wouldn't disclose the names of officers who committed these violations. So this is a clear win for transparency advocates everywhere. But on the ground, are folks, saying this is a good thing? Are folks asking for more?
Well, none of the law enforcement agencies that I reached out to yesterday got back to me, but I did speak to a retired police chief out of Jersey City. His name is Bob Cowan. He thinks that this is a good idea because he says, one, it will tell the public when an officer has committed what the state believes is a serious violation. Two, he thinks it's actually good for officers because he believes that now officers are going to know for sure whether, if they got in trouble for doing something and they got a 5-day suspension, they'll know if someone else who did something equal also got a 5-day suspension. He said it may at least eliminate or at least shed some light on when there are political forces at work that are charging some cops and letting other cops go.
Okay, gotcha. Now, this order takes effect later this year. Is that something that municipalities have to start doing now, or is that something that the Attorney General has to release more guidelines on how it actually be released?
Well, the state police superintendent Callahan said yesterday that basically almost all of this information already gets released, but there are no names attached to it. Now there are going to be names attached to it. The state police is actually going to go back 20 years and release the names of officers who have committed these infractions for the last 20 years. They're allowing towns and counties and regional police forces to do the same thing, but they're not forcing them to do that. And these lists can be published at any time, but they just have to be published by at least December 31st and then on an annual basis. I talked to some transparency advocates who say, okay, this is an okay first step, but what they want is all internal affairs and police disciplinary records released to the public. It happens in other states. They want it done here. They think that this is an okay first step, but they want more, and I'll have more on that later this week.
Perfect. So the fight for transparency continues. Terrence, thank you so much for just breaking this down for us. We'll watch more of your reporting on NorthJersey.com. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Now, folks, the news, it doesn't stop here. You can head over to NorthJersey.com to find the latest headlines throughout the day. And if you have some news to share with us, feel free to leave us a comment down below, reach out on Twitter or on Instagram. Now, folks, we're going to leave you with some footage from St. Joseph's Medical Center, where doctors held a vigil in support of Black lives. I'm Jessie Gomez. Thank you so much for watching.
As a mission-driven organization, rooted in a proud history of diversity, we wanted to hold this vigil today as a recognition of the power of a peaceful demonstration to begin healing even the deepest of wounds. Thank you, and thank you for being part of today's vigil. And God bless you all. Thank you.